Truistery Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot. Today, Truistery Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. It was just before dawn in Pinebrook when Maya Carter stepped out onto her front porch, the sky still smudged with slate-gray clouds. A chill wind stirred the budding dogwood trees lining Elm Street, and the soft glow of street lamps cast long shadows across the narrow sidewalk. Clutching a wicker basket filled with her mother's freshly baked whole-grain bread, kale bundles, and farm-fresh eggs, Maya locked the door behind her and set off toward her sister's townhouse 2 blocks away. As she neared 214 Maple Avenue, Maya saw the front gate standing ajar. That was unusual. Abigail Jennings liked things orderly, from her perfectly trimmed hedge to the polished brass knocker on the door. The gate's gentle squeak echoed in the stillness, and Maya's heart fluttered uneasily. She hurried up the brick pathway, leaves crackling underfoot, and peered through the narrow window beside the front door. Inside, Abigail stood by the hallway mirror, her shoulders tense, arms wrapped protectively around herself. The early morning light, muted by drawn curtains, caught on pale bruises blooming like dark flowers across her high cheekbone and along the curve of her jaw. Abigail's fair skin showed every contour of pain. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Before Maya could knock, Abigail spun around, eyes widening as she reached instinctively for her hair, pulling long chestnut strands forward to shield the marks. Her mouth opened and closed, searching for words. "Maya," Abigail managed, voice husky with unshed tears. Maya pushed the door open with gentle firmness. I brought breakfast," she said, stepping inside. She set the basket on a small console table cluttered with picture frames. Abigail with their mother, Abigail cradling Maya as a toddler, Abigail in her Willow Creek University cap and gown. Each photo seemed to pulsate with a life that now felt painfully distant. Abigail's gaze flicked to the bread, then back to Maya's face. "You didn't have to come so early," she whispered. Maya crossed to Abigail's side and raised a hand, but stopped midair. She knew Abigail didn't want pity. Instead, she placed a raw egg and a bunch of kale on the table, deliberately keeping her voice steady. "Mom worries when you don't answer your phone," Maya said. She sent eggs from her backyard coop and kale from the community garden. Abigail closed her eyes. Exhaustion and shame etched deep in the lines around them. "I'm fine," she said. Just bumped into the door. Maya reached out now, placing her palm lightly on Abigail's forearm. "The bruises don't look like door bumps," she said quietly. "Tell me what happened." Abigail's eyes flew open, pain warring with defiance. She pulled back, wrapping both arms around herself again. "I don't want to talk about it," she said. "Please." Maya knelt beside her sister, so they were at eye level. "Okay," she said softly. "But you're not alone." She took Abigail's hand, marbled with blue veins, and squeezed gently. Ever alone." A single tear slipped down Abigail's cheek. She drew in a shuddering breath and looked away. Maya nodded, refusing to press further. Instead, she guided Abigail over to the breakfast nook, where a potted orchid stood in silent witness. "Let's get you something warm to drink," Maya suggested, rising to fetch 2 mugs from a cupboard, one pale blue, one soft gray. As water steamed and cocoa coffee grounds settled, Maya's mind roamed back through the years. She remembered laughing with Abigail over Jenga tournaments in the living room. She remembered how Abigail would sing lullabies to baby Maya on thunderstorms' most furious nights. How had things become so fractured? Abigail accepted the steaming coffee, wrapping both hands around the mug. Maya returned to the table with a plate of avocado toast, smashed avocado, a sprinkle of sea salt, red pepper flakes. "Your favorite," Maya said. Abigail managed a small smile, but the corners of her mouth trembled. They sat in silence for a few minutes. The only sounds the drip-drip of the coffee maker and distant rumble of a delivery truck. Finally, Abigail whispered, Jacob got drunk again last night. He said I was useless, that I never do anything right. He shoved me. Maya's heart lurched. She remembered how charming Jacob had seemed, offering Abigail a job managing finances at Blue Oak Bistro, introducing Maya to fine wines at the holiday party. He had seemed stable, generous, even kind. But here was the truth. Words that cut, hands that struck, a sibling terrified to share. "How long has this been going on?" Maya asked gently. Abigail looked down at her coffee. "Since the wedding," she admitted. "I tried to talk to him. I begged him to go to counseling, but he just laughed and said nobody needs a marriage counselor. Then he got angry when I pressed it. And it's only gotten worse." Maya's jaw tightened. She wanted to stand up, to storm over to Jacob's place and confront him. But it wasn't her story to seize. It was Abigail's. "Thank you for telling me," Maya said. "I'm proud of you." She lifted Abigail's chin so their eyes met. "We'll figure this out together." Abigail blinked back tears. "I'm scared," she confessed. "I know," Maya said, wrapping her sister in a careful hug. "But you're not alone. Not ever." In that moment, as morning light crept through slatted blinds and two sisters held each other close, a fragile vow formed between them, to face whatever came: fear, anger, heartbreak, together, side by side. Pinebrook's peaceful streets might hide shadows, but in Abigail's small kitchen, love and solidarity had cast their own bright light. When their father, Robert Jennings, died in a head-on collision on the outskirts of Pinebrook, the world Abigail, Chloe, Maya, and Ethan thought they knew unraveled in a single instant. Robert had been the town's gentle high school chemistry teacher, beloved for his patient demonstrations and occasional magic tricks with dry ice. At home, he was the doting father who guided Chloe through her first sewing projects, joined Maya in late-night stargazing experiments, and played skateboard chase with Ethan in the driveway. The morning after the funeral, their mother, Laura Jennings, a middle school librarian known for her quiet smile, stepped onto the front porch in her favorite cardigan and announced to the empty driveway, "Breakfast is at 6:30. Then we move forward." And move forward they did. Abigail, the eldest at 26, instinctively assumed the role of second in command. She had always been the family's emotional barometer. When her father fell ill 18 months earlier, Abigail had traded her morning jogs for hospital visits, sitting through chemotherapy sessions in the sticky heat of midsummer. She learned to time her father's morphine doses, to read the flicker in his eyes that said he needed more blankets, and to diffuse his frustration with gentle jokes. Her compassion, honed under fluorescent hospital lights, carried her to Willow Creek University's School of Education on scholarship, and later into a classroom in Cedar Falls, where she taught 4th grade. But despite her natural gift for soothing anxious students, she carried home every evening a backpack heavy with grief and unpaid bills. As soon as school let out, she'd race the 45-minute drive back to Pinebrook, pull on her well-worn apron, and chop vegetables for Laura's famous tomato basil soup. Chloe, 24 and fiercely independent, found her refuge in fabric. Once, when Ethan accidentally splashed red paint across the living room carpet, Chloe transformed the stain into a bold abstract design by sewing a patch of tapestry over it, her first act of restoration through artistry. She took a part-time position at Maple and Thread, a modest sewing atelier on Pine Street, mastering invisible seams and hand-rolled hems under the watchful eye of Mrs. Falco, the town's revered dressmaker. After Robert's death, Chloe spent late nights hunched over a refurbishing machine, repurposing thrift-store denim into sleek messenger bags and painting hand-stitched silk flowers on thrifted jackets. She sold her creations at weekend craft fairs, sending every penny home so Laura could keep the lights on. In whispered conversations at the kitchen table, Chloe sketched floor plans for her future boutique, a place she would name the Cotton and Thread, where each garment told a story. The dream kept her nimble fingers moving through exhaustion and long-ago tears. Maya, The analytical heart of the family at 22 responded to loss with spreadsheets and Excel macros. At 12, she created a budget tracker to manage her meager allowance and charted her babysitting earnings against summer camp tuition. The precision that made her classmates groan through AP calculus tests also enabled her to patch together financial aid applications and scholarship essays without missing a deadline. When Robert's medical bills piled up, Maya volunteered to babysit for neighbors, promising them carefully itemized receipts so they would understand exactly how she spent their money. By senior year of high school, Maya held the county record for math competition awards. In late afternoons, she could be found in the corner of the living room, lamp aglow, decimal points dancing before her eyes. Her older sisters teased that Maya's favorite lullaby was the gentle hum of her family's budget balancing. But Maya's quiet determination ensured that tuition checks arrived on time and that Laura never had to choose between heating oil and groceries. Ethan, age 10, was the family's wild card. He survived tragedy as though immune to sorrow, with the boundless energy of a cartoon character sprung to life. Within days of the funeral, Ethan had turned the front yard into a makeshift skate park, shards of grief flying as he attempted trick jumps on his battered board. He dragged his sisters into impromptu science experiments, baking soda volcanoes erupting in neon foam, rubber band projectile launchers aiming for the clothesline, and refused to stop until every failure turned into laughter. Though he struggled with multiplication tables, Ethan's grasp of physics was uncanny. He could calculate the precise angle needed for a ramp jump and the velocity at which his toy rocket would land in Grandma's hydrangea bush. Ethan's exuberance both exasperated and delighted his older sisters, reminding them that life, however fragile, still pulsed with possibility. Each evening, at precisely 6:30, the Jennings family gathered around the battered oak dining table in their two-story colonial on Oak Street. Laura would ladle out hearty portions of her tomato basil soup. Chloe placed a fresh batch of blueberry muffins at the center. Abigail brewed chamomile tea in 2 delicate floral mugs, and Maya distributed a stack of math worksheets, an old habit carried over from tutor sessions. Ethan burst through the door, cheeks flushed from skateboard exploits, plopping into the chair his father once occupied. No words of the day's tragedies needed repeating. The empty place setting spoke volumes. Yet somehow, their shared meals wove them back together, spoonful by spoonful. It was in those nightly rituals that the girls' individual strengths merged into unbreakable solidarity. Abigail's empathy lent warmth to Chloe's pragmatism. Chloe's creative resilience inspired Maya's methodical problem-solving. Maya's steady hand lent balance to Ethan's unbridled zeal. Ethan's laughter reminded them all why life was worth rebuilding. On nights when Laura slept early, overwhelmed, Abigail would tuck her in, brushing her silver-threaded hair back before joining Chloe and Maya cleaning dishes and brainstorming floor plans for the cotton and thread. Even Ethan would insist on vacuuming the crumbs, his small frame working the handle with stubborn efficiency. School milestones continued despite sorrow. Abigail earned recognition as Teacher of the Year at Cedar Falls Elementary, delivering acceptance speeches with a trembling voice that she steadied by picturing her father's proud smile. Chloe's first boutique pop-up in the Pinebrook Holiday Market sold out its entire inventory in under 2 hours, prompting local newspaper features on her upcycled fashion. Maya's summer internship offer from Stonebridge Capital arrived the same week she aced the state math championship. And Ethan, crowned Most Creative Science Project, unveiled a solar-powered water purifier that left judges both impressed and soaked in surprise. In each triumph lay echoes of Robert's kindness and Laura's unwavering belief. The children were no longer defined by tragedy, but by the legacy of love their parents had bequeathed them. Though grief still visited in silent moments, Abigail tracing her father's initials inside her wedding band, Chloe's sewing machine pausing at the memory of her father's gentle applause, Maya wrestling with a momentary sense of abandonment, Ethan dreaming of catching his father's skateboard ride. Each sister found a pathway through sorrow and toward hope. By the time Abigail welcomed her first cohort of students each fall, she did so with a deeper compassion forged by personal loss. When Chloe opened the cotton and thread in downtown Pinebrook's historic district, she named the storefront's wooden bench Dad's Lookout, in honor of the father who first taught her to mend. Maya, now a junior analyst at Silverstone Investments, mentored young women through financial literacy workshops, echoing Laura's lifelong advocacy for education as empowerment. And Ethan, entering high school, engineered his own robotics club, determined to fix things, both machines and broken hearts, with equal fervor. That battered oak table, nestled under the single fluorescent kitchen bulb, had done more than sustain the Jennings family's bodies. It had sustained their spirits. Through generations, shared dinners became a ritual of renewal. Conversations veered effortlessly from algebraic wonders to sewing patterns to classroom triumphs, and laughter rose above the low hum of sadness. In the quiet of those evenings, for siblings and their mother forged a bond as sturdy as the oak itself, roots entwined by love, watered by tears, and nourished by unwavering determination to build brighter tomorrows. Abigail Jennings stood in the grand entryway of Evergreen Manor, her wedding gown, an ivory satin creation with delicate lace sleeves, poised perfectly against the swirling marble staircase behind her. 2 years earlier, she had met Jacob Palmer at the annual Pinebrook Charity Gala. He was the son of Vincent Palmer, proprietor of the famed Blue Oak Bistro, and known throughout the region for both his philanthropic contributions and his effortless charm. That night, he had approached Abigail with a nervous smile and an offer of crab-stuffed mushrooms and vintage Pinot Noir. He had laughed easily at her dry quips about science fair volcanoes and even admitted he'd never met a chemistry teacher before. By the time the gala's string quartet slid into Can't Help Falling in Love, Abigail found herself leaning into Jacob's warmth on the wicker love seat near the terrace. Their courtship moved like scenes from a romantic film: candlelit dinners at Blue Oak Bistro's private patio, afternoon strolls beneath the dogwood blossoms in Maplewood Park, exchanged playlists of vintage jazz and modern folk. Jacob showered Abigail with thoughtful gestures, a single hydrangea blossom pressed into the pages of her favorite poetry book. Surprise tickets to a planetarium show when she lamented missing Ethan's school trip, and quiet reassurances that he cherished both her brilliance and her tenderness. Abigail, in turn, balanced his extravagance with down-to-earth practicality, reminding him that true happiness lay in small moments, like watching Ethan's first kart race or helping Chloe hang her first boutique sign. When Jacob asked Abigail to marry him on a brisk autumn evening by the Cedar Falls lighthouse, she nodded through tears, the ocean wind tangling her hair, and said yes before he could finish kneeling on one knee. Their families rejoiced. The Jennings sisters drank too much punch at Laura's modest engagement party, while the Palmers toasted with fine brandy at the bistro's private cellar tasting. The wedding was set for exactly 1 year later, scheduled on a Saturday in late spring when Pinebrook's rose bushes were in full bloom and the chance of rain was low. Despite the joyous lead-up, subtle cracks began to appear once Abigail moved into Jacob's 3-story Victorian on Riverside Drive. Jacob was frequently away on business trips for Blue Oak Bistro's expansion, leaving Abigail alone with an empty house and an unquiet mind. The glossy social media snapshots Jacob posted: sunrise on the Sonoma coast, candid toasts at Napa Valley wineries, felt like taunts to Abigail's quiet days at her classroom, her evenings grading essays, her weekends running errands for Laura and checking on Chloe's boutique. They tried to bridge the distance. Video calls at 11 p.m. after dinner prep, Jacob surprising her with fresh peonies from the local florist, and Abigail matching his champagne flutes with handwritten notes on their anniversary. But scheduling conflicts crept in. One call dropped when Jacob boarded a red-eye flight back to Chicago. Another ended abruptly when the bistro's financial audit demanded his immediate attention. Underneath his suave apologies, Abigail sensed his impatience, and hers began to flare. When Abigail announced her pregnancy one golden afternoon, her voice trembling as she read the positive test she'd purchased from Maple Street Pharmacy, Jacob was in the midst of a merger meeting and said, "That's wonderful, Abby. Can't wait to celebrate tonight," before returning to his PowerPoint presentation. Abigail's joy dimmed replaced by a knot of worry. She had dreamed of cradling her baby in early spring light, reading bedtime stories for her own child just as she had for Ethan and her future nieces and nephews. But Jacob's distracted smile only deepened her sense of isolation. The months that followed were uneven. Jacob attended the first obstetric appointment, commenting on the heartbeat like a fond spectator. He asked tentative questions about nursery colors and baby names, mentioning his own childhood nickname, JJ, for Joshua Jacob, and Abigail's love of nature-inspired names like River or Willow. Yet he derailed at the mention of prenatal classes, insisting she didn't need extra lectures when he was already paying for Blue Oak's managerial seminars. If Abigail pressed for reassurance, Jacob's tone turned clipped. "I'm working for us," he'd say. "I just need you to trust me." On a raucous November evening, 3 hours past his planned arrival time, Jacob returned home reeking of bourbon and cologne. Abigail had left the porch light on, marking her anxiety. He stumbled through the door, greeting her with a sloppy grin. "Hey, sunshine," he slurred, missing the careful tray of ginger tea and toast she'd set out. Abigail's heart sank as he sank into the armchair, remote in hand, eyes fixed on the football game. "Do you even care about our baby?" she asked, voice trembling through the warm kitchen air. Jacob flicked him a half-smile. "I care, Abby. I really do," he replied, but his hand stayed on the remote. "You're overreacting. Maybe that ginger tea's kicking in." She advanced, wrapping both arms around herself. The lines of an argument writhed between them. "This baby," she said, "needs you." His next words, delivered in a careless sneer, shattered something inside her. This baby? Or this babysitter pretending to be me? He paused, realized what he'd said, then turned his head sharply away. Abigail's cheeks flamed. "How dare you?" she whispered, backing toward the kitchen doorway. "How dare you?" Jacob's posture shifted, anger kindling in his eyes. "I'm tired," he barked. "I'm tired of being tied down, of your school schedules, of everyone's expectations." He rose unsteadily from the chair. "I didn't ask for this." Abigail's breath caught. She grasped the counter's edge. "You're going to regret that," she said softly, tears pooling. Before she could step back, Jacob's hand jerked out, and a sharp shove knocked her against the doorframe. A sickening crack echoed as her nearly 5-month belly slammed into the corner of the frame. Agnes, their golden retriever, let out a whimper. Abigail collapsed, the room tilting, a hot sear across her abdomen as her breath whooshed out in a single sob. Jacob froze, panic replacing rage. He swallowed hard, shaking. Abigail, oh God. I'm sorry," his voice broke. He half ran, half stumbled to kneel beside her, grabbing her hands. "I didn't mean, Jesus, I didn't mean to." Pain radiated through Abigail's spine. She gripped Jacob's trembling hand, fear and heartbreak coiling together. "My baby," she croaked, vision blurring. "It hurts." She was right. The doctors later said the impact had torn delicate membranes. In the sterile brightness of the ER, Jacob hovered far too close, muttering prayers over her shoulder as nurses rushed for lines and ultrasound gels splattered. Abigail lay on the gurney, chin trembling, her father's white lab coat, no. Her father's surreptitious teaching coat of kindness and safety felt a million miles away. The fetus's heartbeats had faltered, then stilled, as Jacob's fingers dug into her palm. Impending loss eclipsed hope. Jacob did not cry. He simply leaned into the steady hum of hospital machines, white knuckles holding onto Abigail's fingers. Doctors and nurses buzzed around them. "We'll monitor her overnight, may need to induce labor, emotional support, counseling resources," all in hushed, professional tones. Abigail closed her eyes against the fluorescent glare, tears tracing quiet rivers down her cheeks. She felt the weight of Jacob's presence, so necessary in that hospital hush, so wounding in their bedroom hours before. His remorse did little to soothe her inner storm, the ache in her abdomen, the raw emptiness where a child should have fluttered, and the echoing silence that followed Jacob's careless shove. That night, Jacob walked the quiet hallway outside her room, wringing his hands in pale hospital scrubs. He dialed Chloe's number, voice hushed. "It's my fault," he whispered.
Iha tar.
He didn't ask how to fix what happened, only how to help Abigail forgive him. Chloe, protective and unflinching, told him to come clean to Laura first, to face the consequences of his actions with humility and genuine remorse. In the early dawn, Abigail was moved to a private room, ordered to rest. Jacob sat beside her bed, abandoned PPE gown crumpled at his feet, belt undone. He hadn't slept. When Abigail opened her eyes, she saw his red-rimmed gaze. "I'm so sorry," he said again, voice small. "I never wanted to hurt you. Never wanted to lose our child." She studied his face, handsome once in photographs, now drawn and hollowed by guilt. He rubbed her knuckles between his fingers. "You deserve better than me," he whispered. "I'll do anything to make this right." She closed her eyes, the hospital's white walls pressing in. Part of her wanted to believe him, wanted to feel that old spark of safety she once experienced in his arms. But another part ached with betrayal, her body bruised, her dreams of motherhood shattered, her future uncertain. She remembered her father's gentleness, Laura's quiet courage, Chloe's resilience, and Maya's logic. If she was to rise again, she would need to decide whether to include or exclude the man who had torn her world apart. When the nurse returned with morning rounds, Abigail quietly let Jacob's hand slip away. He leaned in, brushing a misshapen curl from her forehead. She opened her eyes, gave him a single nod, and said, "I need time." As the nurse adjusted her foreline, Jacob's cheeks glistened with unfallen tears. In the sterile hush, two lives lay suspended, Abigail's wounded heart and the memory of the child who never was. The choice between forgiveness and farewell would come later, but in that stillness, all that remained was the fragile promise of healing and the uncertain path both would walk alone, or perhaps one day, together again. In the weeks following her hospital discharge, Abigail retreated behind the closed doors of Riverside Drive, her mind a tempest of grief and simmering rage. Each morning she rose before dawn, her wedding ring still encircling her finger, a cold reminder of Jacob's betrayal and the life they had nearly built. She poured herself black coffee in the same china cup Jacob had given her on their first Christmas. Her first stop was the hidden shelf in Jacob's home office, where she retrieved an old botanical encyclopedia he'd once inherited from his grandfather. The leather cover bore an eagle insignia, and inside, pages detailed the medicinal properties of herbs. Abigail remembered her childhood weekends helping her grandmother in the Jennings family's modest garden. Mint for upset stomachs, calendula for minor wounds, chamomile to soothe restless children. She realized that if she could wield that knowledge now, she might reclaim her power. Over the next morning light, Abigail converted Jacob's second-story study into an impromptu apothecary. She cleared a spot on his mahogany desk and lined up glass jars, some labeled chamomile, peppermint, valerian. Others she would fill herself. With the botanical guide open to the chapter, Toxic and Psychoactive Species, she traced her finger down a list of plants that induced confusion, hallucinations, or cardiac irregularities when ingested in precise dosages. Her heart pounded as she read of Aconitum napellus, monkshood, a flower whose roots could trigger nausea, blurred vision, and, in higher doses, heart arrhythmia. She thought of Eleanor Palmer's condescending sneers and the women's club lunches where her mother-in-law belittled Abigail's small-town roots. Abigail's chest tightened. If Jacob could shatter her, Abigail knew she couldn't rush the process. She spent the next 3 days researching legality and symptoms. She needed a plan that looked accidental, a sudden decline, perhaps blamed on heart disease or old age. Eleanor, at 68, had no known major illnesses. But the right combination of herbs could mimic a stroke or a heart attack, and in the final stages, induce delirium, convincing hospital staff it was a tragic but natural emergency. Her first trial was peppermint and chamomile, low-risk intoxicants she used to confirm the taste and effect on her own mild headaches. She steeped the mixture in hot water, drinking it cautiously. It eased her tension without alarming side effects, confirming that the method of infusion worked. Next, she worked with low doses of valerian root, known to cause drowsiness and confusion. In a powdered form, she ordered under the guise of herbal tea ingredients. Over 2 evenings, she dissolved a teaspoon in her own tea before bed. The haze that settled over her mind was delicate, enough to blur her dreams without wrecking her memory. Satisfied, she cataloged the experience in a small leather-bound journal, flipping ahead to the pages where monkshood and nightshade awaited. The critical challenge was delivery. Eleanor often joined Jacob for weekend brunch at Blue Oak Bistro's rear garden patio, sipping mint lemonade under string lights. Alternatively, she hosted Thursday afternoon bridge games in her sunroom, complete with cucumber sandwiches and fruit tarts. Abigail lined up her opportunities, adding a small sachet of dried, powdered monkshood to the ice water dispenser in Eleanor's sunroom, where the fine green dust would dissolve quietly. Or blending a custom garden mint garnish for Eleanor's lemonade at a scheduled family luncheon, unnoticed amid basil sprigs and sugar rim. She orchestrated these details with meticulous care, pausing only to breathe when her conscience whispered its protests. Protests she silenced with the thought of her unborn child lost and her own body battered. Wednesday arrived, the day of Eleanor's weekly bridge group. Abigail donned a crisp blouse and soft cardigan, conservative attire designed to allay suspicion. In her purse, she concealed a small glass vial containing a finely sieved powder of aconitum roots. She slipped into the sunroom as Chloe brought in miniature quiches and cucumber rounds on mismatched china. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow across Eleanor's flower-patterned sofa. Abigail poured Eleanor a fresh carafe of sparkling water into a highball glass. As she turned her back to retrieve garnish linens, she flicked a minute pinch of the pale powder into the glass's bottom. Eleanor's laugh rang suddenly loud when she turned around, clinking a bridge scorecard against her knee. She regarded Abigail with mild surprise, then raised the glass. For health and happiness, she toasted, fingers grazing the rim. Abigail forced a smile and helped set up the card table. By the time the women settled around the felt-covered surface to lay out hearts and spades, Eleanor's eyes began to cloud. She whispered, "Girls, something's odd," as her hand shook over her glass. A mild gasp went up as Eleanor tipped her head back and swallowed the liquid. She grimaced, then stood unsteadily. Abigail froze, mind racing. Was it doing too much, too fast? She watched Eleanor's eyes flutter, then concentrate as though slits in a shutter. Eleanor edged toward the sofa and collapsed into its petals at shoulder cushions, murmuring, "My heart racing, help me." The other women sprang up. Chloe dashed to the phone. Maya, who'd arrived for a surprise visit, sprinted to Eleanor's side. Abigail stepped back, face pale, then smiled as though offering reassurance. "She'll be fine," she told her astonished sisters, her heart pounding so fiercely she wondered if she'd triggered a similar effect just by watching. An ambulance ride later, Abigail stood outside the bright emergency bay at Pinebrook Community Hospital, arms crossed, her expression composed. She greeted Jacob and Laura as they hurried down the hallway, panic in their steps. Jacob's face was gray. "Is she stable?" he asked. "Doctors say she's experiencing tachycardia and short-term confusion," Abigail explained softly, nudging her chin toward the sliding glass doors. "They're admitting her for monitoring. She woke up just now, asked for her medications." Jacob didn't respond. Laura, frail and fatigued from work, closed her trembling hand around Abigail's. "Thank you for calling her," she whispered. Abigail nodded, voice gentle. "Of course," she said, glancing at the colored blotter on her wristwatch. "She'll need her strength." In the following days, Eleanor's health stabilizing, Abigail maintained an outward calm that fooled everyone. In private, she returned to the study apothecary, meticulously noting the timeline: onset of symptoms 30 minutes post-exposure, duration of confusion, fluctuations in blood pressure. She adjusted her dosage calculations in her journal, striking out old numbers and writing new ratios for her next target, a small dinner party at the Bistro Mansion, where Jacob and Eleanor hosted local donors. There, she would incorporate a blend that induced only a mild cardiac event, enough to break Eleanor's pride but short of permanent damage. While her revenge plan unfolded, Abigail underwent her own metamorphosis. The mirror by the apothecary desk reflected a woman hardened by loss, eyes glinting with determination. The weight of every bruise Jacob had inflicted settled on her shoulders, fueling a drive she'd never known. In the quiet of that study, she rehearsed conversations, her innocent smile when asked, "Where did you learn herbal medicine?" Her earnest shrug, "Just some old family recipes," she'd say. No one would suspect the Jennings family teacher of malice. The era of Abigail Jennings, the nurturing educator, had ended. In its place stood Abigail the Avenger, uncompromising, precise, and utterly prepared. Night after night, she pored over obscure pharmacology texts borrowed from the city library, root extracts that simulated stroke-like symptoms, blossoms that triggered hallucinations of shadows and whispers, seeds that induced fainting spells akin to heart attacks. She cross-referenced medical journals for case studies, ensuring her methods would hold up if questioned. She coded her entries in Latin and in shorthand, a nap for monkshood, a trop for atropine-like toxins. Her pen flew across the pages, each line reinforcing her purpose. All the while, her emotional core oscillated between satisfaction and guilt. In moments of quiet, she grieved for the baby she lost. She mourned the woman she once was. She whispered apologies to empty rooms. But the scalding fury that had risen from her wounds demanded action. Her vengeance was no longer about punishing Jacob alone. It was about inverting the power he'd wielded against her, about forcing the woman who had tormented her to taste vulnerability. It was about reclaiming agency in a life that felt stripped bare. The day of the Bistro fundraiser arrived. An elegant gala beneath white canopies in the Rose Garden, guests in cocktail attire sipping champagne. Abigail arrived alongside Laura, her expression demure beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Chloe flanked her with a tray of finger sandwiches, Maya assisted by holding the commitment ledger of donors. Jacob greeted them with a brisk kiss on Abigail's gloved hand, the ghost of guilt in a smile when he noticed Abigail's slightly raised eyebrow. Abigail guided her mother to a garden bench and offered her a glass of mint-infused water. She dipped one of Chloe's sandwiches into a small dish of herb-infused aioli she'd prepared, an innocuous blend of tarragon and basil with an untraceable drop of her nightshade extract. Laura closed her eyes, savoring the flavor. Abigail watched, heart steady, then dipped a second sandwich for herself. They munched politely as Jacob passed a glass of rose to Chloe. As the sun dipped beneath the arbor, Eleanor swept into the scene, a vision in pearl gray chiffon, her diamond brooch sparkling. Abigail rose to greet her, curtsying just enough to look humble. "Mother," she said, "it's good to see you enjoying yourself." Eleanor nodded, pursing her lips in a practiced smile. "Delightful event, my dear." She paused, then tasted the aioli on Abigail's recommendation. Her eyes lit with approval. "You have a talent for flavor," she said. Then, mid-sentence, her features flickered. She clutched her chest and gasped, stumbling toward a rose-laden trellis. Abigail sprang forward, steadying Eleanor's arm. "Mother?" she asked, guiding her to a wrought iron bench. Chloe and Maya rushed from opposite directions. Jacob halted, horror-stricken, as Eleanor's skin grew pale and her breath came in short, desperate gasps. "She," Eleanor whispered, voice ragged. "My heart." Doctors and paramedics swarmed like startled birds, lifting Eleanor onto a stretcher as Abigail checked her watch. The symptoms played out precisely as she'd logged: rapid pulse, disorientation, faintness. As the ambulance sped away, with sirens muted for discretion, Abigail slipped a protective arm around her mother. "You're safe now," she murmured, voice calm though her chest heaved. "You're safe." Later, when Jacob confronted her in the hospital corridor, panic and guilt dripped from his every word. "What did you do?" he demanded.
Why?
Eleanor could have died. Abigail raised her chin, eyes icy. "You taught me vulnerability," she said softly. And she broke me. I simply returned the lesson."
He opened his mouth,
Searching for words. She turned away, walking back toward Eleanor's room, her quiet footsteps echoing with the irreversible truth. In his attempts to control her life, Jacob had unleashed a force he could no longer contain. And Abigail, having walked the silent path of vengeance, now held both the law of balance and the fragile threads of a family's ruin in her steady hands. Maya Carter arrived at Stonebridge Capital every weekday at exactly 7:45 a.m., her tote bag neatly arranged with laptop, notebook, and a stainless steel tumbler of cold brew coffee. The lobby's glass doors slid open as she stepped inside, and the familiar hum of printers, ringing phones, and hushed conversations enveloped her like a second skin. She greeted the security guard with a nod, "Morning, Carlos," and made her way past the reception desk, where Maya often spotted Nathan Pierce in the early glow of the foyer's LED lights. Even from a distance, Nathan carried an air of calm authority, tall, lean, with dark hair neatly combed back and steel-rimmed glasses that caught the light when he reviewed his tablet. He greeted the receptionist with a warm smile before disappearing into the trading floor. 6 months earlier, Maya had joined Stonebridge Capital as a junior analyst, fresh out of finance camp and hungry to prove herself. The moment she voiced a question about a complex risk adjustment model during orientation, Nathan paused, turned, and spent 10 patient minutes sketching out the equation on a whiteboard. She watched as his hands traced precise lines, his brows furrowed in concentration, and his tone softened when she nodded in understanding. That exchange marked the beginning of something neither had anticipated, a quiet fascination born of shared intellect and gentle encouragement. Over time, their interactions grew beyond spreadsheets and market forecasts into subtle rituals that wove a tapestry of trust. Each morning, Nathan hovered by the coffee station on the 15th floor, scanning Bloomberg headlines. Maya learned to time her arrival so she could drop off an extra creamer or, on particularly rough mornings, a spare cold brew she'd procured from the new cafe next door. One crisp April day, she set his mug on his desk with a sticky note. "Took the liberty. Heard you ran out yesterday." Hot beverage later, she noticed that yellow note pinned above his workstation, alongside photographs of his daughter Lily's 5th birthday party and a framed family portrait. In that moment, Maya realized her small kindnesses meant more than simple courtesy. Nathan reciprocated with his own gestures. When Maya struggled to carry a stack of client reports to the boardroom, he appeared at her side, steadying her load without a word. His fingers brushed hers as he handed her the final folder, and she felt a thrill of warmth. One evening, long after most of the office had emptied, Maya stayed behind to prepare a midnight deadline presentation. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she wrestled with the last slide. A gentle knock on the glass pane revealed Nathan, his dark eyes shadowed with concern. He set down 2 mugs of herbal tea and quietly sat beside her, guiding her through the final calculations. At midnight, when the report printed in pristine stacks, he pushed one to her, whispering, "For your eyes." Their professional victories forged a deeper bond. Maya devised a novel metric that fine-tuned the firm's flagship investment pitch, and Nathan integrated it seamlessly into the board presentation. When the executive committee approved a $120 million allocation, applause filled the vaulted conference room. As others filtered out, Nathan leaned toward Maya and murmured, "We did it." The shared triumph tasted sweeter than any champagne. Small surprises punctuated their days. On Nathan's 32nd birthday, Maya enlisted Chloe's help. Chloe shipped artisanal candles and a handwritten card. She slipped into his office before morning roundups and draped a colorful lei around his neck. Surprised, he laughed, a rich, genuine sound, and invited her to a quiet elevator ride down to the lobby cafe, where he bought her a chai latte in gratitude. Later, he placed one of her candles on his home office shelf beside Lily's drawings. She felt honored that her gesture left a tangible mark on his world. As spring ripened into summer, Maya noticed her own heartbeat quicken at the sight of Nathan. She found herself rehearsing lines to say when he walked into her cube, her stomach fluttering like Lily's preschool kite in the wind. Their conversations strayed beyond work. He asked about her weekend forays into farmers' markets. She inquired after Lily's piano recital. During lunch break, they shared grilled chicken sandwiches on a rooftop garden, trading stories of childhood mischief, Maya's mud-splattered science projects and Nathan's first paper route when he was 8. His laughter at her memory of a failed baking soda volcano echoed in her ears long after they returned to the trading floor. The crucial moment arrived on Father's Day weekend. Maya drove 2 hours to Nathan's lakeside cottage, invitation clutched in her hand, Lily's special picnic with Mommy Trish. The sun shone bright as Lily ran barefoot through the grass, squealing with joy. Nathan manned the grill, flipping burgers with the same quiet precision he applied to portfolio models. Maya felt a surge of affection as Lily spilled ketchup on her dress and Nathan knelt to wipe it away, ruffling her hair with a tender grin. Later, when the three of them strolled along the water's edge collecting smooth stones, Lily tugged on Maya's sleeve. "Can we have a moment, Mommy Trish?" she asked, a conspiratorial glint in her eye. Nathan and Maya stepped behind a grove of willows, shielded from view. The air smelled of pine and campfire smoke. "She really likes you," Nathan said, watching Lily skip ahead. His voice was soft, hesitant. I like her too." Maya turned to him, heat blooming in her cheeks. "I like her a lot." He exhaled, his normally composed facade slipping. "And I'll like you even more." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally as though they'd always belonged together. The breeze stirred their hair and carried with it the endless possibilities of that confession. Maya's pulse hammered as Nathan leaned closer, eyes searching hers. "Maya," he whispered, "I never imagined loving again, until you walked into my office on day 1. He paused, a vulnerability in his gaze that melted away her last doubts. "I want you in my life, beyond these cubicles, beyond meetings, beyond every risk model we create." Maya's breath caught, tears of joy wetting her eyelashes. She squeezed his hand and whispered, "I've wanted to hear you say that since the first time our eyes met." His smile lit the shaded path, and their first kiss, gentle, affirming, infused with the promise of partnership, sealed a love story that had grown from spreadsheets and boardroom triumphs into something far more precious. From that day forward, their office romance was no longer a whispered secret, but a shared commitment. They navigated lunch breaks at Maplewood Park, weekend playdates at the Science Museum with Lily scribbling equations in her notebook, and late-night calls discussing both market trends and life goals. In the world of finance, where numbers could feel cold and transaction-driven, Maya and Nathan's love blossomed as the truest investment imaginable, one yielding dividends of laughter, trust, and a future they were eager to build together. Chloe Jennings never dreamed her life would unfold in pastel hues of contentment after the storm of her family's early tragedies. When her father passed away, she was only 24, scrambling to make sense of grief while mastering the sewing machines at Maple and Thread, the modest Pinebrook atelier where she apprenticed under Mrs. Falco. Nights spent hunched over fabric, rethreading bobbins by lamplight, transformed into an unexpected sanctuary. Each stitch whispered resilience. From a ripped seam on her own favorite jeans to a frayed hem on a customer's vintage dress, Chloe learned that every tear in cloth could become the foundation for renewed strength. Her break came on a brisk spring morning when a fashion blogger from Cedar Falls posted a glowing review of a hand-stitched denim jacket she'd purchased at a weekend market. Customers flooded in, clamoring for Chloe's signature upcycled designs, palm leaf prints on old button-downs, hand-embroidered rose motifs on canvas totes, and custom-fitted skirts made from thrifted lace curtains. Sensing the momentum, Chloe launched Urban Bloom in a tiny corner space above Maple and Thread, converting dusty shelves into display racks and painting the walls a soft mint green that contrasted against her bold fabric choices. Opening day felt surreal. Neighbors queued on the cracked sidewalk, clutching reusable bags and wide-eyed with excitement. Laura Jennings, clutching a bouquet of daisies, beamed as Chloe cut the ceremonial ribbon with a pair of gleaming fabric shears. Within months, Urban Bloom earned a reputation across Pinebrook's historic Main Street. Customers loved how Chloe's designs told stories. The cinnamon-colored corduroy trousers she salvaged from a warehouse clearance, now tailored to mid-century modern flair. The velvet scrunchies she crafted from curtain swatches for local students who wanted retro chic. Social media took notice, and soon orders arrived from nearby cities. Each package wrapped lovingly with a sprig of dried lavender from Chloe's mother's garden. Yet despite the buzz, Chloe preserved the boutique's intimate atmosphere. She greeted every visitor with a warm welcome. She shared smiles with local artists whose pottery she displayed on her countertops. And on slow afternoons, she'd sketch new embroidery ideas as her favorite jazz records played softly overhead. Amid Urban Bloom's blossoming success, Chloe's personal life flourished in gentle tandem. At a community renewable energy fair, she met Caleb Morgan, a 30-year-old civil engineer whose keen interest in sustainable architecture matched her own passion for repurposed materials. He wore boots caked in clay from a recent site visit and carried plans for a zero-waste community center in Pinebrook's northern district. Their conversation began over a shared fascination with upcycled wood beams and grew into hours of laughter as they wandered between solar panel exhibits and interactive wind turbine models. By dusk, they found themselves on a grassy knoll overlooking the lake, sipping honey-sweetened lemonade and swapping stories of childhood ambitions, hers to become a designer who honored the planet, his to build structures that could stand centuries. Their courtship was a tapestry of simple joys. On Saturday mornings, they shared farmers' market waffles drizzled with local maple syrup before Caleb accompanied Chloe to her boutique, eager to learn embroidery techniques by hand. Evenings found them cooking vegetarian stir-fries in Caleb's eco-friendly kitchen. He taught Chloe knife skills, and she introduced him to the meditative art of color blocking in fabric. They attended workshops on urban gardening, planting container herb beds on exposed rooftop terraces, and took spontaneous road trips to salvage yards, rummaging through cast-off doors and window frames, tangible remnants that fueled Chloe's creative vision. Before long, their shared laughter echoed through both Chloe's studio and Caleb's drafting table, weaving two ambitious lives into one harmonious duet. Their wedding, held on a sun-drenched afternoon at Lakeview Barn, captured the essence of their partnership. The rustic venue, with weathered wood siding and panoramic views of Silver Lake, glowed with strings of Edison bulbs and mason jar lanterns hanging from oak beams. Chloe's dress, a bespoke creation of soft linen overlaid with embroidered vines, mirrored the boutique's aesthetic, while Caleb, in a tailored slate-gray suit, looked every bit the thoughtful builder she admired. Laura Jennings walked Chloe down the aisle, her eyes brimming with pride, and Ethan, now a lanky teenager, aligned as best man, telling jokes to ease his sister's pre-ceremony nerves. When they exchanged vows beneath a floral arch of locally grown peonies and eucalyptus, the congregation felt they were witnessing not merely a marriage, but the union of two souls rooted in shared values of sustainability, compassion, and unshakable support. Life after the honeymoon settled into a warm rhythm. Chloe and Caleb converted the barn's adjacent old caretaker's cottage into their shared home, painting rooms in gentle creams and grays. Chloe's sewing table found a new companion in Caleb's drafting desk. Sketches and blueprints mingled with fabric swatches and thread spools. Weekdays, Chloe led her small team at Urban Bloom, now 3 trained seamstresses and a part-time intern, while Caleb juggled on-site inspections and 3D modeling, each supplying home-cooked lunches and midday text check-ins. They merged their convictions at every turn. The boutique installed solar panels on its roof, and Caleb's firm prioritized reclaimed lumber for local housing projects. Even their shared social calendar reflected their united purpose: volunteer days planting community gardens, craft workshops teaching mending to anyone curious, and fundraisers for the Pinebrook Women's Shelter orchestrated by Chloe's boutique. The pinnacle of their joy arrived when Chloe gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Zoe, 2 months ahead of schedule on a golden June morning. The cottage's guest room, repurposed into a cozy nursery with hand-painted murals of wildflowers, quivered with excitement when the twins arrived. Emma and Zoe's first cries echoed like a symphony of new beginnings, and Caleb wrapped them in soft muslin swaddles, tears glinting in his eyes. The newborns possessed their mother's curious gaze, wide brown eyes that flickered with wonder at the world around them, and their father's steady breathing, nuzzled against parents who adored every tiny finger and puckered lip. Chloe's mothering style reflected the serenity she'd cultivated over years of mindful design. Morning feedings unfolded in the nursery's rocking chair, where Chloe hummed lullabies her grandmother once taught her. Afternoon playtimes transformed the yard into a sensory garden. Pastel wind chimes tinkled overhead, miniature slides fashioned from salvaged planks invited careful descents, and Caleb encouraged the twins to touch healing herbs, lavender, chamomile, mint, under the dappled sunlight. At night, Chloe and Caleb took shifts pacing the cottage's wooden floors when colic struck, whispering reassurances in hushed tones. "Mama's here. Papa's got you," until the girls drifted back to sleep. Their weekends brimmed with family-first activities. Saturday mornings at the Pinebrook Farmers Market included freshly baked raspberry scones for the infants, mashed fruit mixed into oat flour for gentle tummies. Sunday afternoons found them picnicking at Willow Creek Park, where Chloe snapped photos of the twins exploring peony blooms, and Caleb offered them small paper airplanes from his childhood. Both sets of grandparents took turns visiting, bringing diapers and baby blankets, swapping culinary wisdom, and marveling at how effortlessly Chloe balanced motherhood with her creative passions. Even as sibling Abby wrestled with her own marital storms and Maya navigated the complexities of an office romance, Chloe's life radiated a quiet confidence. Her boutique thrived, now including a children's line named Petal and Bloom, featuring tiny embroidered bloomers and twill overalls for Emma and Zoe. She managed orders that streamed in online from across the state, yet every package was wrapped with the same personal touch: a silk ribbon, a handwritten thank you, and a sprig of dried lavender. Her brand's ethos of conscious fashion and ethical sourcing gained acclaim, but Chloe remained rooted in Pinebrook's camaraderie, hosting monthly mending circles where neighbors brought torn jeans and mismatched buttons to learn how to repair clothes and build community. As the twins approached their first birthday, Chloe reflected on her journey from grief to abundance. Her heart swelled remembering the tears she shed at her father's funeral, the nights she spent working those precarious shifts to keep her dreams alive, the moments she wondered whether joy would ever return. Now, if she paused to listen, she could hear Emma's soft babble, Zoe's delighted giggle, and Caleb's gentle hum as he read them bedtime stories. The cottage's windows framed a world she designed: sunlit gardens, reclaimed wood floors, fabric scraps repurposed into quilts draped over rocking chairs. Every stitch she'd sewn, every sacrifice she'd made, had woven itself into this vibrant tapestry of family and fulfillment. On a particularly tranquil evening, Chloe tucked both daughters into their matching cribs, kissed their foreheads, and crept back into the living room where Caleb waited on the couch. He handed her a cup of chamomile tea, brewed with lavender from Laura's garden, and they sat in companionable silence. Outside, fireflies winked among the tall pines, and a warm breeze carried with it the faint scent of honeysuckle. Chloe leaned into Caleb's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her ear. "I love this life we've built," she whispered. He turned to kiss her temple. "I love you," he replied, "and every petal you bring into it." In that golden hush, Chloe knew that her happiness wasn't a fleeting blossom but a perennial bloom, rooted in resilience, nurtured by love, and destined to flourish through every season. Maya Carter inhaled deeply as she stepped onto the cobblestone courtyard of Cedar Grove Manor, the early sun glinting off the ornate fountain at its center. Her gown, ivory silk with subtle pearl embroidery and soft cap sleeves, traced graceful lines from bodice to hem, the train trailing like a gentle river. In her hand, she held a bouquet of pale roses, eucalyptus sprigs, and gardenias, each bloom chosen for its symbolism of purity and new beginnings. Across the courtyard, Nathan Pierce waited beneath an arbor draped with wisteria and fairy lights. He wore a deep navy suit tailored to perfection, his tie picked to echo the bridesmaids' sage green dresses, but it was a steady, expectant gaze that drew Maya forward. As she approached, Lily, Nathan's 6-year-old daughter, darted to the front row, clutching a basket of rose petals. Chloe and Abigail sat side by side, their faces alight with pride, while Maya's mother, Laura, polished tears with a lace handkerchief. Ethan, now studying engineering at a nearby college, stood at the back, camera poised to capture every moment. The gentle strains of At Last drifted from hidden speakers, setting hearts alight with emotion. Nathan slipped off his jacket and draped it over a nearby bench, extending his hand. "You're stunning," he whispered, voice husky as though afraid it would break if spoken too loudly. Maya smiled, lifting her fingers to his cheek. "I can't believe this is real," she replied, her voice full of wonder. They exchanged vows beneath the wisteria's boughs. Nathan's words came first. "Maya, you have brought light, laughter, and unwavering support into my life. I promise to honor your dreams, to stand by you in every joy and every trial, and to love you and our children with all my heart." When he slid the simple gold band onto her finger, tears glittered in his eyes. Maya's own vows followed. "Nathan, you've shown me patience when I doubted myself, kindness when I was afraid, and strength when I needed it most. I promise to cherish you, to lift you up, and to build with you a home overflowing with love and trust." Their first kiss, gentle and affirming, drew applause that echoed like rolling waves across the manicured lawn. That evening, under strings of lanterns and a starlit sky, guests toasted the newlyweds with sparkling cider and danced to the soft rhythms of a live jazz quartet. Maya and Nathan shared their first dance as husband and wife, Lily twirling between them, her laughter a pure bell of joy. Maya rested her head on Nathan's shoulder, closing her eyes at the feel of his arms around her, the solid anchor she'd longed for through every uncertainty. Just weeks later, Maya discovered she was expecting. Ribbon-wrapped cupcakes unveiled the news at a family brunch, Lily's squeal of delight confirming their dreams. But happiness blended with familiar anxieties when, at 17 weeks, a sudden pain sent Maya to Cedar Grove Medical Center. Nathan, his navy suit hastily abandoned for scrubs, paced the waiting room until the doctor emerged to assure them, "Baby's heartbeat is strong. You're both healthy." Nathan's knees buckled, and Maya caught him, relief flooding her features. He kissed her forehead, murmuring, "I'm so sorry I ever doubted. I love you both so much." They prepared the nursery together, walls painted in soft dove gray, accented with sage green shelves holding both Maya's stack of children's books and Nathan's favorite mechanical toys for their future son. A framed ultrasound hung above the crib, a reminder of the tiny heartbeat that had bound their hearts. Weekends saw them assembling furniture side by side, laughter echoing through empty rooms as power tools whirred and floorboards caught stray screws. Yet joy carried whispers of doubt. At a routine third trimester ultrasound, Maya's stomach nodded when the technician furrowed his brow. A slight dip in growth percentiles triggered nights of research and follow-up visits. Nathan rearranged his schedule to sit beside her in each appointment, offering steady hands to squeeze and encouraging words, "We'll do whatever it takes." When follow-ups confirmed normal growth, Maya's shoulders relaxed, and they celebrated with homemade pizza and shared smiles late into the night. On a crisp autumn morning, Maya felt the first true pangs of labor. Nathan sprang into action, packing their carefully curated hospital bag, cradling her hand as they navigated the dew-slicked driveway. The drive to Cedar Grove Medical felt surreal. Lampposts whooshed by, and Maya's breath came in sharp bursts of determination. In the delivery suite, she leaned into each contraction, focusing on Nathan's calm voice. "You're doing beautifully." After 14 hours of intense effort, Maya summoned her final strength, and a newborn son emerged into the world with a jubilant cry. Nathan, tears streaming, held their son, tiny and perfect, against his chest. "Welcome to our family," he whispered. Maya, cradling the baby in her arms, kissed his head and murmured, "Hello, Milo." Hospital nights blended into home routines. Nathan, on extended paternity leave, swapped briefcase for burp cloth, mastering diaper changes and late-night lullabies. Maya, exhausted but triumphant, navigated breastfeeding with Nathan's unwavering support beside her. When well-meaning visitors assumed she needed extra help, Nathan politely guided them out, then turned to Maya with a grin. "You've got this." In each challenge, colic spells, midnight feedings, first baths, they found strength in partnership. Their homecoming from the hospital was a jubilant party. Lily greeted them with handmade, welcome home, signs, and confetti. Ethan captured the chaos on video, and Chloe delivered lasagna and casseroles to sustain them through newborn fog. Laura enveloped them all in a sweeping hug, marveling at the family they'd built. In Milo's wobbly first steps, in Lily's proud display of her big sister status, in Nathan's gentle coaching voice, Maya saw the promise of the vows they'd exchanged months earlier. As winter approached, the Carters settled into a warm rhythm. Saturdays meant cozy family breakfasts of pancakes and peppermint cocoa. Sundays brought nature walks bundled against the chill, with Milo snug in Nathan's arms and Lily skipping ahead. Maya resumed part-time work, now leading financial workshops for new parents at Stonebridge, while Nathan balanced early conference calls with midday check-ins at home. Their shared gestures, Maya's careful lunch notes tucked into his briefcase, Nathan's sly text reminders to rest, wove a tapestry of mutual support that sustained them through every season. On Milo's first birthday, they celebrated back at Cedar Grove Manor's courtyard, party balloons dancing in the breeze, a smash cake awaiting the birthday boy's curious hands. Maya and Nathan stood hand in hand, watching family and friends surround their son with love. As Milo smeared frosting across his cheeks, Lily gleefully guided his tiny hands, and the Carters' laughter rang clear against the winter sky. In that moment, Maya understood that the journey from wedding arbors to newborn cradles had solidified their bond beyond measure. Their vows, once words beneath wisteria, had become the living foundation of a family united by trust, compassion, and love that would guide them through all of life's chapters. As autumn faded and winter's hush settled over Pinebrook, the four Jennings sisters and their families found themselves at the twilight of one long narrative and on the threshold of countless new beginnings. Across Winding Oak Street, Abigail and Jacob walked hand in hand through the amber leaves, their footsteps echoing in deliberate harmony. Through careful therapy and honest reckoning, Abigail had reclaimed her voice from the shadows of fear and found in Jacob a willingness to rebuild trust. Their marriage, once fractured by violence and loss, now rested on a foundation neither could have imagined beneath the wisteria arbor, a foundation of accountability, compassion, and the belief that second chances could blossom even from the deepest wounds. In downtown Pinebrook, Chloe's Urban Bloom boutique glowed like a lantern in the winter dusk, its mint green walls alive with repurposed fabrics and hand-embroidered art. Customers came not only for her eco-friendly styles, but for the sense of community Chloe cultivated. Monthly mending circles, pop-up craft nights, and a small reading nook where she hosted story hours for local children. Caleb stood at her side, his arm around her waist. As they unveiled their latest Petal and Bloom children's collection, soft, linen play sets featuring embroidered buds and vines. In that moment, their twin daughters, Emma and Zoe, toddled across the floor in matching smocked rompers, their laughter bright as bells. Chloe, wiping a tear from her cheek, whispered to Caleb, "We did it, not just for us, but for everyone who believed in this dream." It was a testament to resilience, creativity, and the transformative power of love unshaken by tragedy. Up on the 15th floor of Stonebridge Capitol, Maya Carter settled into her desk one crisp morning with a renewed sense of purpose. The framed photos on her cubicle wall, one of her wedding under cedar blossoms, another of little Milo grinning at his first Halloween costume, served as gentle reminders of the life she and Nathan had built. Nathan bustled past, offering her a freshly brewed matcha latte, reporting with a satisfied grin that the client presentation she co-led had secured a landmark partnership. When afternoon shadows lengthened, he slipped a hand into hers, his silent support a daily reaffirmation of trust. In quiet moments, Maya reflected on the path that had led her here. From spreadsheets and risk models to the tender certainty of parenthood and partnership. She thought of Abigail's journey through darkness to forgiveness, of Chloe's metamorphosis from apprentice to boutique owner, and realized that each of them had manifested their truest strengths by embracing vulnerability, claiming agency, and leaning on one another. Meanwhile, Abigail's delicate truce with her past echoed through every hallway of Evergreen Manor, where the echoes of her father's chemistry jokes lingered in family photos and the faint smell of Robert Jennings's workshop gloves hung in spare jackets. She had poured her pain into a meticulously crafted apothecary of herbs, harnessing scientific knowledge to confront her hurt, an undertaking rooted in both ancient wisdom and contemporary rigor. Yet, she had ultimately chosen mercy over malice, recognizing that the karmic cycle she once sought to complete through vengeance could be transformed by genuine contrition and the courageous act of forgiveness. Jacob, having faced the consequences of his actions and committed to change, now attended every family gathering with an open heart, eagerly sharing in the day-to-day joys of baking with Laura or planning weekend hikes along the river banks. At the heart of the Jennings legacy lay the unwavering devotion of Laura, their mother, whose quiet strength had guided each daughter through grief's labyrinth. On a snowy afternoon, she sat by the fireplace in her cozy living room, surrounded by framed portraits, her late husband's warm smile, Chloe's proud ribbon-cutting at Urban Bloom, Maya cradling Milo in the hospital gown's glow, and Ethan's joyful grin at his first chemistry lecture. As she held a cup of chamomile tea, her heart swelled with gratitude for the family they had become, a tapestry woven from threads of sorrow and triumph, kindness and resolve, laughter and tears. She had nurtured them with steady hands and boundless hope, teaching them that love's promise lay not in perfection, but in the tenacity to rise again, to heal, and, on a crisp December morning, the four sisters reunited at the Jennings family home for their annual holiday breakfast. The table groaned under a feast of blueberry pancakes, maple-glazed bacon, fresh fruit salad, and steaming mugs of hot cocoa. Ethan, home from his engineering internship, regaled everyone with tales of robotics competitions, while Lily danced between chairs to Jingle Bell Rock. As the sisters exchanged meaningful glances, Abigail's serene smile, Chloe's radiant glow, Maya's sparkling eyes, their laughter rang out like chimes in the frosty air. It was a moment suspended between past and future, a living affirmation that the cycles of karma, of cause and consequence, had led them not to perpetual retribution, but to the enduring power of redemption. The themes that had coursed through each woman's life, karma, forgiveness, trust, and family bonds, converged in that single moment. They understood that sometimes the universe delivered painful lessons to teach resilience, that forgiveness was not a forgetting of wrongs, but a brave choice to transcend them. That trust was earned through consistency, empathy, and reparative action, and that family, whether bound by blood or by chosen affection, was the crucible within which the soul found both challenge and refuge. Each sister had walked a unique path, Abigail through the shadowed forest of vengeance to the light of compassion, Chloe through the thorns of financial hardship to the garden of creative fulfillment, Maya through the precincts of corporate precision to the intimate world of love and parenthood, Ethan through the kaleidoscope of childhood loss to the collaborative spirit of invention. Yet their journeys were woven together by the luminous threads of shared experience and unwavering mutual support. As they cleared the breakfast dishes and layered on scarves to face the crisp winter air, Maya paused and looked at her sisters. "We've come so far," she said softly. "From the day we lost Dad to this morning's laughter, our story has been one of falling and rising." Abigail placed her hand on Maya's shoulder. "And we rise because we have each other," she added, her voice steady as the oak table that had borne so many confessions and celebrations. Chloe, adjusting her wool coat, smiled. "We plant seeds of hope where there were once only shadows." Ethan, hoisting a camera over his head, chimed in. "And we document the miracles, big and small." They all laughed, the sound swirling into the cold air like steam. Later, as the sisters departed one by one, Abigail to her newly renovated townhouse on River Street, Chloe to her boutique and family home on Main Street, Maya to her lakeside cottage with Nathan and Milo, their hearts were light with gratitude. Though their story had curved through pain and uncertainty, it had led them to an enduring truth, that love, in its many forms, was the greatest force in the world. It healed wounds, it bridged chasms, and it propelled them forward, ever forward, toward lives rich in purpose and connection. In the years to come, the Jennings sisters would continue building on this foundation. Abigail would volunteer at women's shelters, offering self-defense workshops informed by her own journey. Chloe's Urban Bloom would expand to a second location, funding scholarships for aspiring artisans. Maya and Nathan would guide Milo and Lily through every milestone, teaching them both the power of intellect and the grace of empathy. Ethan would lead groundbreaking engineering projects that combined sustainability with inventive design. And through it all, Laura's quiet wisdom would echo across holiday tables and every moment in between. The final lesson of their shared saga was clear. Life's tapestry is woven not only from threads of struggle but from the gold of forgiveness, the silver of trust, and the vibrant hues of familial love. Karma may set the patterns, but it is our choices, toward compassion or vengeance, toward partnership or isolation, toward generosity or resentment, that determine the final design. In choosing love, the Jennings family had crafted a masterpiece of hope, resilience, and unity, an enduring testament to the transformative power of the human heart. And so, as winter's first snowflakes drifted across the Jennings yard, each sister stepped into her own tomorrow, carrying forward a legacy defined not by sorrow, but by the radiant promise of forgiveness, the steadfast bond of family, and the unwavering trust that, together, they could transcend any darkness and embrace the light of new beginnings. And that brings us to the end of today's story on Truistory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.